has Prince Harry burned all bridges with the royal family? Joining us now, two broadcasters who know how important this interview will be. Esther Kraku, who says there's no coming back for Prince Harry now because he continues to stay in the spotlight. Well, journalist and broadcaster Nina Mishkov believes the prince isn't being malicious and simply wants to share his experience. Good morning to both of you. Nina, the criticism of Prince Harry is that by constantly talking about the problems that he has with his family, he's not making them better, he's making them worse.
I think he's perfectly entitled to express his own opinion and to tell his story as he sees it. And, in fact, he is not the first in the royal family to do this. Princess Diana told her story in 1992 to Andrew Morton. And then in 1994, Prince Charles did it himself. There was a television interview with Jonathan Dimbleby, and there was a book which he'd been kind of authorised by Charles. He gave him his letters and his diaries. And within that book, Charles made it very clear what a difficult childhood he'd had, how his mother, the Queen, was distant, how his father was a very, very, very strong character, and the difficult childhood he had had. Now, when that all came out, there was a poll in The Sun. 2/3 of Sun readers said he was not fit to be king, that he'd trashed the royal family, he trashed the House of Windsor, he trashed his pet, you know, everything.
Right.
Now...
So Prince Harry's just following in an honourable tradition set by his father.
Well, Charles would know that. Charles would know that.
Isn't the difference here that you mentioned Princess Diana's interview, you mentioned the Charles interview in the book, but it was just one airing. This seems to be going on and on and on and on and on. Every time you turn the telly on, there's Harry whinging about something to do with his background of the royal family.
You're saying whinging. The point being...
Oh, yeah, he is whinging, yeah.
No, he's not whinging. He's expressing his view. He has been... Oh, and you heard him say there, it's the leaking and the lack of support, the leaking from the palace via a very complicit media. And it's there to see. It's there for all to see.
Why should we care?
Well, because if we care about the royal family, then we should care about how they conduct themselves.
Esther, is it whinging or a legitimate fight back?
It is completely whinging. I mean, this is not the first time he said this. He had the Oprah interview, which was probably the tackiest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Excuse me, can I just ask you, what came out of the Oprah... What was the terrible thing that came out of the Oprah Winfrey?
Constant whinging.
No.
That's what came out of it. He didn't say anything new.
Give me a fact. Give me a fact that came out of the Oprah Winfrey that was so terrible.
Yes, the fact is they were complaining about how unhappy they were in the royal family. That was the entire spectacle.
Yes, and then this give me a terrible fact. Give me a terrible fact.
The terrible fact is you have these two privileged individuals who weren't happy in the royal family, fine, and who've spent the last 2 years constantly complaining and whinging and going to the media, tarnishing this family that they didn't want to be a part of. It's called whinging. They're adults. Some of us have our own problems. We can't sit there and complain and say, it's about my truth. We have to get on with life. That's what being an adult is
within the media that have been planted
when you do it consistently like this.
OK, let's speak at the separate
They had the Oprah interview, which was tacky as anything, and then they did this Netflix documentary, which was basically a long, drawn-out episode of Jerry Springer. This is clearly a family issue that they should handle within the family, but by turning it into a spectacle, they're bullying the royal family, and now he has the audacity to say he wants his family back. How do you get your family back?
I think the words bullying, the words bullying...
It is bullying. It is because
bullying from the other side.
You can't do this and they say you want your family back. You don't get to choose that.
Didn't the royal family extend the olive branch after the Queen died? There was the walkabout with William and Kate. Harry was allowed to wear his uniform on one occasion.
On one occasion and on one occasion not.
But they allowed him to. And no one has spoken a word of rebuke. Not one word of rebuke has come from the palace.
That's the royal family. Harry has said that he's tried privately to sort it out, and he can't. That is why he has gone public.
It's not surprising, is it?
And now he's got $100 million for his trouble, for not being able to do it privately.
Here's in my opinion, what happened. Before Meghan arrived, in terms of the pecking order, in terms of popularity with the public, it was the Queen and then Harry. Now, when you've got an institution like monarchy that needs to roll on and just keep going, that's not right, because it needs to be the Queen, Charles, William, OK? When Meghan arrived, they became superstars, and they kind of put a kind of a dampener on what should be Will and Kate. That could not be allowed to continue, because the monarchy has to keep churning on.
Yes, but the question we're here to discuss this morning is how can Harry, and this is the fresh stuff that's come out of the interviews that are going to be aired on Sunday, how can he expect the royal family to issue him with another olive branch if he keeps complaining about them? For example, I have a sister who I love very much. If I were to spend the next 10 minutes bad-mouthing my sister, I would expect her to put the phone down when I called her up afterwards.
Yes, but
There's only so much a family can take.
The thing is, has Charles been rehabilitated? Has he been reconstituted? He is now about to be crowned king, and yet he did exactly the same thing in 1994.
Okay. Once. Not on a Netflix documentary and getting $100 million for his trouble.
He went on live television and admitted to adultery.
Yeah.
Yes, and he didn't keep doing it 2 years down the line. No, I'm sorry, but that is the point. Because this is all they do. They said they wanted to leave the royal family to carve their own path to do good. They have not done any good. They have just spent the last 2 years whinging and complaining.
They have
a nice mansion
very
in
hard
California.
for charity.
They have a nice mansion in California. Why don't you stay there with your kids and your chicken coops and keep your mouth shut? Because we've heard everything that's heard.
But one of the reasons, as we've seen from these small clips of these interviews, Prince Harry feels like he can't have that kind of life and get on with it because there's, even though privately he says he's trying to reconcile with his family, every time he reaches out and does that privately, there are briefings that he has no control of, that Buckingham Palace
then he needs to step back, because now what he's doing...
What, and just be at the mercy of those briefings as he sees it?
He needs to be an adult and get on with it, because he has a family, he has a wife and kids who depend on him. Not everything can be about you and your feelings and talking about your truth. The public will never know the truth, because all we've heard is Harry and Meghan's narcissistic truth. There is the other side of the truth, which the royal family will never let us know, because they're not going to dignify this tantrum with a response, as they shouldn't. So we just need to move on. And talking
about conciliatory gestures, we do read quite widely now that the couple are going to be invited across to the coronation.
Yes, because that's what classy people do. They don't sit on Netflix and complain and get $100 million. They keep at it. They keep their sense of duty and service. They stay like adults and just keep it moving, which is what everyone should be doing, not following these two brats across the world who don't seem to get, who will never seem to be happy. You always have something to be complaining about. For goodness sake.
Be adult about this. What is it to you? Why are you so angry about them?
Because I have family. And if I had a family issue, I wouldn't want my family to be sitting on television turning my life and our issue into a spectacle. That's not what adults do. You have family. Would you be happy if your kids did that?
I don't have children.
Would you be happy if your significant other did that?
Well, of course he wouldn't do that.
But why wouldn't he do that? Why not?
Because we are a couple...
because you're adults. That's the difference.
My dear girl, I'm way beyond adult.
All right. Okay.
That's the point.
Listen, I find your view childish. Listen, the briefings that have Last point. They have been badly served, this couple, by the media being briefed by the palace. They have been pushed out.
Okay.
They are entitled to say what they have gone through, what they feel, and I would also like to know...
Repeatedly.
What are the...
For a nice sum of money.
What are the...
Not for free.
People are so jealous of that.
It's not jealousy, I'm just saying.
What are the royal family so terrified? What are they terrified about?
OK.
Why are they so terrified?
We will have to leave that hanging in the air and bring this to an adult close. Esther and Nina, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. 21 minutes past 8. I don't know why it gets people so worked up, both sides. You know, obviously we report on these issues it feels like every single morning.
Because of the amounts of money involved, I think.
Is it?
Yeah, I'm sure that's
Or is it because the royal family's involved? I don't know. We'll find out on Sunday more from Prince Harry. And, of course, the book Spare is out next week as well.